In this video, we're going to build out the search functionality for the applicant user. Up to this point, we've been building the applicant's dashboard to work with their own applications and their account. And previously, we were moving in the direction of only having those two sections on this page. But I've introduced the third section here, which is the search functionality, so that the applicant can do all of these things from one place. All right, so now we have three groups. We have our applications, the account details, and now a third group which has nothing designed in it yet to do all of the searching, see the results, being able to save the jobs that they want, apply to the job. All of that functionality happens in here. So this group is going to respond to the custom state as well in order to become visible when that value is 3. We've also got our navigation button here as well. Again, it'll change color when the value is 3. And when we click on that button, let's go find it. Let me open up my folder here for navigation. When search is clicked, it will set the state to 3. And so just to show you the navigation where we're starting this walkthrough from is just our group being in place. So by default, we see our applications, then we go to accounts, and here we navigate to our blank search group. All right, so we want to do a few things inside of this group. We want to have an input available for the user to search for jobs by keyword, be able to toggle between viewing all jobs that match their search versus their saved jobs, and then seeing the results with everything nicely organized, the title of the job, the company that it's with, being able to save the job, view extra details. We're going to have a full detail page separate from this, and then also be able to apply. So let's get started with adding some elements to this group. I'm going to add an input for the user to search by keyword. We'll say search jobs by keyword, like this. I'm going to have next to this a radio button so that they can choose to view all jobs versus their saved jobs, like that. And I do want this on 2 columns because I only have 2 choices, so I'd rather them live on one line there. Now, both of these items, you see how they're stacking vertically. That's because the group, the layout style is column. Now, I'm going to leave this as column, but I'm going to group these 2 elements together, just multi-selecting by holding down my shift key. Right-click and group these in a row. That way, they appear next to each other like this instead, and we'll have the repeating group of results down below. So let's correct some layout settings here. I'm going to center this horizontally. Let's add some gap spacing so we have a little bit of separation there, maybe 30 pixels apart. Let's remove the minimum height, also the minimum width. Same thing for the minimum height on this one. I just want it to fit directly around that content, and so you can see how it's vertically aligned to the top of my group. I think it'll look a little bit better if we have it centered, and just for consistency, I'm also going to center this, although we can see that the top and bottom edges of that input expands to the full width of the group, so it wouldn't really make a difference if we selected any of these. But I like to have things consistent wherever possible. In the event that I might introduce another element here, I want to make sure that everything is centered inside of that group. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, so let's add a repeating group to display our results, and we make it pretty big because this is kind of the center point of this entire section. I'll horizontally align that as well, and I do want some separation between this group up at the top and my repeating group. So I'll go to the primary container here, add some gap spacing. Let's do maybe 20 pixels, push it down, and let's configure this repeating group. So the type of content here is going to be job post, and I want to search for job posts that match my keywords, right? So I want to say any field contains the value of that input, like this. Any field constraint is very helpful for things like this. And I'm also going to ignore empty constraints. That way, when I first load the search page, it automatically shows me search job post results. And if I sort them by the creation date, then I'll always be able to see the newest jobs posted at the top of this list. Okay, you don't have to have this checked. If you leave it unchecked, then Bubble is going to wait for you to type something in here because there's a constraint on it, right? And so it'll only show you job posts that have that constraint. Layout-wise, I want to have this repeating group show me enough where I can scan, a handful of them at a time, but not so much where, we have the entire database of job posts populating the screen. In fact, that could really hurt the performance of the page. If we have hundreds and hundreds of jobs, even thousands, we don't want Bubble to try to load everything all at once. So I'm going to control that by having a dynamic number of rows here in the repeating group, but showing only a few at a time that we scroll through. So I'm going to remove the fixed number of rows setting. We can define, you know, the minimum height of the row. So maybe we do a little bit less than what it is now, about 70 pixels. I think that's enough room for me. And in the layout of the repeating group, I am going to keep it at a fixed height. Okay, so I'm going to check this box and let's do maybe 400 pixels of height. So you see here in the preview kind of here of the cell design, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a little over 5 rows, partial at the end there. That's how many cells I'm going to see at a time. But this entire repeating group element will have a scroll bar, so I can scroll through them. So the entire page doesn't need to scroll, just the repeating group element. Whoops, didn't mean to move it around like that. And that way I can control the performance of this as well. Okay, so just to preview that, I'm going to throw something in here real quick with a text to display the current cell's job post title. All right, and we'll preview this here. So we should be able to see, because I'm pretty sure I have more than enough job posts in my database. There we go. So it looks like not all of them have a title, but you can see how we have the scrolling behavior happening here. And I'm not having to scroll on the page, right? This is the page scroll versus the repeating group scroll. Okay, so one thing that I could do to make it a little bit more seamless within this group here, let's add a little bit of visual separation between this kind of filter bar area and the results. So the first thing I'm going to do is expand the width of this group here. So let's get rid of the fit width to content setting, right? So you see how it expands, and I'll change the row container alignment to, let's say, center, because there's that 30 pixel column gap spacing. There's still that 30 pixel space in between them, and they stay centered on the page. But you'll notice that the group is fully expanding to the width of its parent. I'm going to add a little bit of padding there so that we have a touch of space above and below. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to have a background color on this. So let's do maybe 20 pixels on the top, 20 on the bottom. And I'm actually going to remove the padding at the group level on the top. So here it has 30 pixels of padding. I'm going to remove that. I do want this group to now sit at the very top, but I don't want the inputs to be at the very top edge. So the purpose of this group, what I'm doing with the spacing here, is so that I can give it a little bit of a offset color to separate it a bit more from, you know, the rest of the search results here, just like that. I think I'm going to make this a touch more subtle, not so blue, right? Just like that. And then our search results will be below. I think I'm going to do also the same thing with the repeating group, in that I'll have it not fit to content or have a max or anything like that. So we'll remove the fixed width setting. You see how the full width of this repeating group expanded. And so that'll make it a little bit more seamless for me in our search results. Let's refresh the page just to see what we're looking at here. So just a simple color separation like this can create, you know, distinct sections in your design. Okay. All right. So let's keep going with the design of this repeating group. I'm going to set the cells container layout style to row so that everything inside is organized horizontally. I'll make this vertically aligned to the center. Let's change this row container layout to space around. And you'll see as I add more items, it'll distribute things evenly, with starting with space on the left and right side of our outermost elements of the row. So this first text is going to be the title, and I do want to make this bold because it's kind of the you know, the heading for the post. It's the first thing that we want the user to see. And then next to it, I want to display the job post company name. I don't want to make this one bold, so I'll turn that off. And then next to that, I'm going to have the location, so we know where this job is held. And then next to that, I'm going to have a couple of my action items. Let's start with my bookmark icon, so the user can save this job. So let's search for a bookmark about this one here. I'm going to make it so that it is more of just a black outline. We'll just do that. Yeah, maybe a little bit not as strong of a black right there. I'm going to also make this a touch smaller. Doesn't need to be that big. We'll do 30 by 30 for the icon and make sure that it's centered. And we're going to have two action buttons. Okay, so we'll start with this one, which is view details. Like that. Make sure that's centered. And also, I'm going to copy and paste this. We're also going to have apply to job. All right, so a few things are happening here that's forcing this content to shift below. We have a lot of, it's not very well aligned. So I'm going to adjust the widths of these texts so that they fit to content. So for example, the title is not going to have a fixed width. Instead, it's going to fit to content and have no minimum. So however big the title is, that's how wide it's going to be. Same thing for the company name. Get rid of the minimum, no fixed width, have it fit width to content. Same thing for the location. Looks like this is in the wrong position. I'm going to move this over. Okay, so no width, no fixed width, but we will fit to content. Now we have a much more evenly distributed setup here. Now, if you want a more uniform table, then having at least minimum widths, but probably fixed widths will be better for achieving that look, because right now everything is fitting to content. So imagine a job post title that's very long. That means that the company name is not going to start till, let's say halfway here. Whereas the next title might be super short. And so the company's name is going to be pulled over. So you might have some staggering there. We'll see what it looks like. We might change it so that things are a bit more uniform, but you have control over, the uniformity and whatever your preferences are in terms of how much you want to allow each piece of content to take up. Now, one thing that I am going to do here is actually group these two together so that they're stacked on top of each other. I think that'll give me a little bit more flexibility in terms of how much horizontal space I have to display all of these things, because I can expand the height of the cell. I always have the ability to do that. I'm going to multi-select the name and the location and group them in a column container like this. Right, so see how much space I just opened up? Because now I'm taking advantage of just vertical space. So now the title can still be longer. I mean, we can push all these things over. The company name can be longer. The location can be longer, without having to run to the edges of the page or having to move things onto, push these buttons onto multiple lines necessarily. So this group here that I've just created, I'm going to have this fit to content and remove the minimum width. Okay, so we have a little bit more flexibility here. Now, let's say that I actually wanted to ensure that these buttons and this icon, they're always on the right. I don't really want them pulled over to the left as much. So I'm going to group these three things together in a row container like this. I'm going to make sure that their container is also fitting to content. Oops, let's move this over to the end like that and add a little bit of gap spacing. Now we have them a bit closer together. If I go to the repeating group and back to the container alignment of the cell, remember we have space around, which is why they're spread out this way. We have space on the right, space on the left, and then even distribution of space in between. I could choose space between, like this. I could choose center and create some gap spacing that way. I could start on the left, I could go to the right, right? There's many things that I can do from here. I think I'm going to leave it actually with the space between setting and then add a little bit of margin on the left of the title and then the right of that group with these buttons from here. So for the left margin of the title, let's add about 20 pixels of space, and then over here, 20 pixels on the right, like that. This feels a little bit more comfortable for me. I could take this one step further and combine the title with this group so that this group is pushed more to the left, but I'm going to leave it here for now. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of how much leverage you have when you group things in a certain way or adjust the alignment, the positioning, fine-tuning things further with individual margins and so on. But now we've got a good starting point. So let's take a quick preview and see where we're at just in our design, and then we're going to hook up our data sources to make it a little bit more interactive. So we'll click on search here. Okay, so see, this is exactly what I mean here in terms of the shifting, right? Because everything is, the widths are fitting to content, and not every job title is going to be the exact same. And what I'm also going to do is filter our jobs so that we're only seeing posts that have a title. I don't want to see these blanks here. We have some test data that is, it's not all the data is filled in. So I'm going to leave those out so that we can see a bit more consistency. So I'm going to search for job posts and just make sure that the title isn't empty. And while I'm here, I'm also going to filter out anything that doesn't have a company or a location, because I'm going to assume that any job post that's created, we're requiring our companies to fill in all these details. We do have some test data that has empty values there, so I want to make sure I can see everything consistently. So I want to say company isn't empty, as well as the location. Oh, the location is part of the company, so that should, well, at least it'll give us the company. There will still be companies without location, but we'll see. So let me preview the page here and just see where we are at in the way that this is looking. Go back to the search tab. Okay, so here's what I was talking about with the misalignment. Because not every single title is going to be the same width, right? So this one is a little bit longer, and so it's pushing this one over just a little bit more compared to all these other ones. So let's fix those a bit more so that we have a touch more consistency. For this title, I'm going to give it a fixed width. Let's give it a fixed width of, let's say, 300 pixels, and then also this group, I'm going to give it a fixed width of 300 pixels. Okay, and we may as well do this group as well with our buttons, fixed width of 300, like that. Okay, and I can, because this particular one has already 20 pixels of spacing, the 300 pixels may already create that spacing for us. We might remove the padding there, or the margins. We'll see what it looks like. Because it's also helpful to have the margins create space for that vertical scrolling bar. All right, so see how everything is much more aligned now? Yeah, and if I remove that margin, I think we'll have enough room to clear the vertical scrolling. So I'm going to remove the 20 pixel margin. I am going to keep the 20 pixel margin on the left of this text. But because I'm fixing this group to 300 pixels, there's more space because the buttons and the icon don't need that much space. But I'm just trying to create some consistency between all of our different sections here that I think it'll allow us to clear that vertical bar. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so we have some alignment there. Okay, so now let's take a look at just making this more interactive. So the repeating group, the data source, again, is filtering off of any field. So if I go ahead and type in developer like this, you'll see that I have 3 results that contain that word. If I type in web, right, we have 1 there. If I type in professor, we have a couple there. Remember that the any field constraint is only going to search plain values like text fields or numbers. So if you had like salary amounts, you could use this for that. Anything that's in a description or a list of keywords, you could definitely search those things there. Now for this radio button, by default, we're going to have the value start off on all jobs. So I'm just typing in what one of my choices are. And the repeating group is set up to show all jobs by default, of course, with our constraints. But in the condition of the repeating group, I can have it change its data source if the user switches over to this value, saved jobs. So here, when the radio button's value is saved jobs, like that, then we'll change the data source of the repeating group. So if we go back to our data structure, under the user data type, we have a field called saved jobs, which is a list of job posts. So rather than searching for jobs like we're doing by default here, in the condition, if they choose this value in the radio button, we're just going to go directly to the current user's saved jobs. It's a different data source to get a list of job posts, but in this case, it's a very specific list that the user will have control over. And we'll actually do that with this icon here. So let's hook that up right now. So this bookmark, when clicked, all right, let me create a new folder here for our search functionality. We'll open it up. Search, okay. So when this bookmark is clicked, we're going to make a change to the current user, and we're going to update the Save Jobs field by adding the parent group's job post to that field. If they click on it, it's going to add it. Now, how do we reverse that? What if they want to remove that job post from the field? So we want them to basically toggle this when they click on that icon. So I'm actually going to create a copy and paste here so that we can do the opposite, right? If they click on this, then we'll want to remove it. But how do we know which one to run at which time, right? Because in theory, if you click on this in the way that it's set up now, it's going to add it, but then remove it, and then nothing really happens. Okay, so we need to add conditions on these events so that only one of these can be true at one time. So in the case of adding a job, we only want that to happen if the job isn't already in the list. So only when the current user's saved jobs doesn't contain the post, right? If that's the case, then we're going to add it, right? If they're clicking on it and we don't have it currently, we want to add it. And then in the other workflow, we'll do the opposite. I'm just going to copy this expression, go over here, paste it, and select the other operator, the opposite, so contains. If they click on the bookmark and it currently contains the job post, then that means we want to remove it. Okay, now before I go and preview that, I want to make a visual change here on the icon so that the user understands very clearly what the status of this job post is for them. So in the condition here of the bookmark, I'm going to say when the current user's saved jobs contains the parent group's post, we're going to do two things. We're going to change the icon to the filled in version of this bookmark right there. And I'm going to change the color to, let's say, like a green, something like that. Okay, so just to preview it, right, I'm just toggling this condition on and off so that you can see the preview. That's what it'll look like based on the data values on that user record. So let's refresh the page. I should be logged in as yes, I'm logged in as Joey right now, who is an applicant. Okay, so if I select this web developer and click on the bookmark, it fills in. If I go check Joey's user record, we should see that job in the saved field. Let me open up where's my saved jobs field? Right there. Close that one. Okay, so here's Joey. Joey has web developer saved and a few other ones actually. And if I scroll through, I should be able to see those other ones. Let's search for one of them. Quality control, VP. Right, there it is. I was able to search for it. And I have the icon. In fact, I should have my saved jobs. Yep, there we go. This is exactly the behavior that I was looking for. Right, so when I switched over, we changed the data source to show me only this list. It's not doing a search of all the jobs in the database. It's going to the user's saved jobs, as long as that radio button is that value. If I switch over to there, then it's going to go back to the default data source of the repeating group where it's doing a search. Now, keep in mind, I can still filter from here. Let's say I save a whole bunch of jobs and I want to filter them down. So engineer like this. Oh, hold on. Let's see. We don't have that programmed in. Let's add that in. I'm glad I did that quick test there. Right, because the data source right now is just always saved jobs. It's not paying attention to my input. So from here, I'm going to add a filter. And the filter is going to be, let's see here. We can do the title. The title contains, or you can say title contains keywords. Either one of those should work in this case. Your input's value. Or we could do this a different way to search different fields. If you only want to search one field, then this will work just fine, right? Let me do a quick preview here before I change it up, because I'm going to switch over to an advanced filter. All right, so if I go back to Save Jobs and select engineer like this, right now it's able to search, or VP like that. But I'm going to do something different. I'm going to actually go into an advanced filter so that we can search multiple fields. So if this job post's title contains the input's value, or this job post description contains the input's value, right? And I could keep going with more or operations if there are other fields that I want to search. I'm also going to hit ignore empty constraints so that I can see all the saved jobs by default without necessarily having to have a keyword entered in there. So let's take a look at that behavior. Okay, so let's go back to our saved jobs. So there we can see everything by default. And if I search for developer like this, then it filters down, or engineer, then it filters down as well. Okay, so you do have a few different ways of doing your filters. These are basic filter, approaches that you can take. There are also plugins that help you get extra functionality around search. You can use your workflows to help filter your repeating groups if you have many different filters and drop downs and selections. But for doing, just a general search of your database and working between viewing one set of records versus a segmented set, this is a great way to go. All right, so now let's hook up the apply to job pop-up so that the user can send in their resume for that job and essentially mark it as applied. So I'm going to add a pop-up to the screen here. And this could be a more involved process, of course. They might have something that they want to type in, like a summary or a cover letter, or they might want to add extra details in addition to their resume. But this is going to be just a file upload, and then upon submission, it marks it as submitted. So we're going to call this pop-up application like this. So the idea is when the user clicks on this button here, apply to job, it's going to open up the pop-up. Let me move this into the search since that's where this is coming from. All right, so we will show the pop-up application, and we need to pass the selected job to the pop-up so that when we do create the application, we know which job they're applying to. So first thing I need to make sure is that this pop-up's type of content is set to job, right? It needs to receive a job post. So that way, when I click on apply to job, it shows the pop-up, but also displays data. This is a recommended action. It's a very common thing when you open a pop-up, you show it and then you pass data. It doesn't always need to happen that way, but when the pop-ups need a data source, then you want to do it in this order. So show the pop-up, display data. Data to display is the parent group's job post. So now this pop-up knows which job you're applying to. Okay, so we can say something like send resume, or we can say apply to, and then we can put in the job post name. So parent group's job post, parent group being the pop-up, title like this. And I'll do a heading here so that it can be centered and just a little bit more formal. Let's make this pop-up responsive. So we'll change this to a column structure. This text will have it centered. I don't want a fixed width. I just want it to fit to content. No minimum height. Let's see if we can do some padding in this pop-up, maybe 20 pixels on top so it pushes that down a little bit. Okay, so here they have the title, and we'll have a file uploader for the user to upload their resume. So this is in the center. So we'll change the placeholder here to say upload your resume like this. Okay, and what else can we do here? We'll create some gap spacing on this pop-up just so that there's a little bit of room between the elements. All right, and I'm going to have the user either mark it as submitted or keep it as a draft. So they may be ready to upload their resume, but not quite ready to submit. So let's say save draft, right? So it's going to create an application, but the status will be in the draft state. And I'm going to do, let's just do a different kind of color here. Maybe like a blue, like this, maybe more subtle than that, versus submit application, right? Like this. And we'll go with a green on this one. Now these buttons I'm going to put in a row. Okay, so I'm just going to multi-select them by holding down my shift key and then right click and create a row container out of them. Okay, so this entire container, I'm going to center it in the pop-up, remove that minimum height so that it just fits around those buttons, and add some gap spacing. So again, we have a little bit of room between those. And you see how this pop-up has a lot of extra space at the bottom? That's just because the minimum height is, or there is a minimum height. We could fit this to content, so I can remove the minimum height so it snaps perfectly around, as tall as it needs to be. But I do want to give some padding here, and I'm going to be a bit more generous with the bottom padding, so we'll do 40 pixels right there. Okay, so just to preview where we're at with this one, go back to search. And for the web developer, if I apply to job, I can see right here, apply to web developer. I can upload my resume, save draft, or submit. So if I save draft, then I'm going to create an application. Let's go back to the search here. All right, we're going to create a new application. And let's fill out all the fields and see what we have, right? So the applicant's going to be the current user because it's the applicant who is doing this. The company is going to be the job post company. The job post is just going to be the parent group's job post. Resume is going to come from my file uploader. I think we have another one on there. Let me see, file uploader. Yes, we have two on here because in the dashboard, remember, we have a way to replace our file when we're just managing all of our applications. So I'm going to say upload resumes value. We're not going to work with the text version of the status. We're going to work with the option set. And so I will set this to draft because they're clicking on the saved draft button. And we have not submitted, so we're going to leave that blank. We actually don't even need to have that there. Okay, so once that's been created, then I can reset the inputs so that it clears out the file uploader. I can hide the pop-up, so it's another really clear visual confirmation to the user that something happened. And I can show an alert message. Let's change the alert message here to say, your application has been saved as a draft. Okay, so let's refresh here and we'll see first saving as a draft, and then we can actually go over to our application section to see that new application. So we'll do web developer again here, apply to job. I'm going to upload just a sample file. Let's do an image like this one right here. Okay, and I will save draft. You see how it went away. We see our alert message. If I open this up again, the input is cleared out. But now if I jump over to my applications tab, you can see there is my draft, right, for this company, for this job. I can view it, right, and we have a status there. It looks like we need a condition on this particular piece of text so that it doesn't display that if it has not been submitted yet. So that's a condition you can add on that one to say if the parent group's application submitted on is empty, then you hide that text and you can collapse it down so that you don't end up with that empty space. So at this point, you know, I can view my resume. So it's going to show me that image that I uploaded. I can withdraw my application, which is going to change the status to withdrawn. And so the company should not be able to see any withdrawn applications. That's just a filter on the company dashboard that you would leave out anything withdrawn or leave out anything that's in draft. And then, or I can actually submit it and, you know, it'll change the status, which just happened right there. So we've gone over all of these workflows in previous videos when we were working on this section for the applicant, right? So now it's been submitted, that's the status, and then this is the date and time that this went through. So let's hook up now the other button in the pop-up, which is going to be very similar to submit the application. In fact, I'm just going to copy this button here and paste it because we should only make a few changes on this one. I'm going to switch it over to the, let's see, it is the submit application button, and we are still going to create a new application, but in this case, the status is going to be submitted. And since we're submitting right out of the gate here, we can go ahead and do the submission date to the current date and time. And then everything else, oh, one more change, the alert message will say, your application has been submitted, like this. Okay, and just to test that one out as well, and actually I'm going to do this one without an upload so that we can confirm that our viewer doesn't show an upload input. So let's go to demo job post. So I'm going to apply to demo job post, submit my application. Your application has been submitted. Go back to my list. There's my new application. If I view it, you can see that I can't open up a resume file because I never uploaded one to begin with, so it's hidden. But here I have the ability to add one for the first time. And of course, depending on, you know, how we would want the rules to go here, I could make it so that, you know, when you're applying to a job, you can't apply one without a resume. I could have a condition on this button to disable it until this has a value, or show an error message instead if they click on the button and we find that the input is empty. Okay, so there's our functionality for search. It gives us a little bit of everything in terms of viewing results. Right now it's sorted by default by the creation date. You can have control over other fields for sorting. You can also have the user control it. So you can change the fields that are sorting by. I can switch between all jobs versus save jobs. Obviously, we have a pop-up system here to do the application. You can, of course, navigate the user to a different page if you prefer to do that. Saving jobs here will just continue to add to my list. So as I add more things, then here's my bigger list of saved jobs. In our next video, we're going to go over looking at the detail page for the job itself. So right now we have a button for this that's not programmed to do anything, but we'll pick this up in our next video as we work through that page. All right, see you there.